Today's guest is Kelly West, and I had Kelly on my podcast probably about a year ago. And at the time, she was working on a new program where she was going to be coaching and helping parents of children who were going through cancer treatments. And she is a former oncologist nurse. Now she works more on the administrative side of the hospital. But I just love Kelly. I am in groups. We went through the Neuro Coaching program together, and she just has the biggest heart. And she got hit hard with, not personally, she didn't experience COVID, but as a nurse working in a hospital, you can imagine what she's had to deal with this past year. And so she got totally sidetracked, and she was exhausted from everything, burnt out. And so through her struggles of not being able to really devote her time to the program that she was so passionate about and have to dedicate most of her life this past year, 2020, to running the hospital and making sure the processes for dealing with COVID were straight and the policies and people were safe, that consumed her. And what she did in the process was find breath work. And she is in the process of getting certified. She's been going through like a 7-month program. And I've worked with her. She's done today, this morning, she did a second breathwork session with me. It was a longer one. And I actually, at the end of it, like had tears running down my face. And it wasn't sad tears, but it is a very powerful practice, something I want to learn more about this year. But we talk about it, and I love our conversation. She's always so easy to talk to, but I love it because we get into a lot of science around it and why it's so powerful and how it can help, particularly as it relates to anxiety. We get into that at the end because both she and I have had experiences with anxiety, and I didn't even realize until we started talking about it, about the value that breath work would bring to that. And so I hope you enjoy this episode. I enjoyed every minute of my conversation with Kelly. So here it is. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today's guest is my friend, Kelly West. And we've known each other for, I guess, a couple of years. We've been in a mastermind together, and then we've kind of run into each other in other groups we've done. But one of the things that she's been on before, and she was in a different place doing something a little different at the time. And she is doing something really fabulous right now. And I wanted to have her back on to talk about what she's doing, because I think her story is super inspiring on just continue to follow your heart and gain clarity as you go. And she's also a nurse, and she has a very crazy, busy life, as you can imagine, this past year. And she told me earlier today that she's gotten the first of 2 vaccines. So yay. But it's been kind of crazy. And what happened with COVID, it kind of derailed her plans for 2020. And so, one of the things, Kelly, I'd love for you to talk about, and you can certainly do a little intro, but talk about how, kind of we go on this journey, and we sometimes don't know what obstacles we're going to face. And yet we face them and we overcome them and learn even more fabulous things. Because what you're doing now, she's becoming certified in breath work. And I just did my second session with her this morning, and they are powerful. I'd never done breath work before, and I had so much fun, or I've just felt it was such a powerful 20 minutes the first time I did it, that I encouraged my clients to reach out to her. And she has helped, I think, like 4 of them now. And it's just really, I'm just going to have you describe it. I can't. But today's session was longer. And it actually, at the very end, it made me cry. It's such a great release. So anyways, welcome to the program. And why don't you just start by introducing who Kelly is?
Yeah, thanks, Lori, for having me. I am so grateful to be here. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 25 years-ish or so. And I have had lots of different roles in that. And like you said, very busy this last year, lot going on. But on my side thing, I've always been interested in doing coaching and helping others. That's where I get a lot of my passion from. Certainly, I think I pull it from nursing to just, it's just a part of me that, has this passion for just wanting to help others and help others feel better, no matter how that, comes about. And so when I started doing my online business, coaching others a couple of years ago, it was really working with parents that their kids have gone through cancer therapy or life-threatening illnesses, because that was sort of my background for many, many years. And then, coming into this year, obviously that's been something that kind of put on the back burner because of everything that's going on. But what it really highlighted for me, and like I always love, action brings a lot of clarity no matter what we're going through, is that how much healthcare workers, need that as well. And so really have been thinking about how much I can have an impact on colleagues of mine and other healthcare workers, first responders that have really had to deal with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, all those things that I certainly experienced myself in this
So
past.
that's curious because for me, I was thinking, and I guess I was thinking wrong, is that I was thinking that you were doing it to help yourself through last year, and I'm sure
Yeah,
it benefited a lot. But of course, like you said, being a nurse, wanting to help others, yeah,
yeah, I absolutely, I would say that I initially started this journey with breath work to help myself. I had actually been introduced with breath work probably around the end of 2019, the start of 2020. And I had really started on my own spiritual journey at that time. I'd always, had kind of that in my background in my life growing up, but really was tapping back into that and feeling a calling. And at that time, I was introduced to Sam, who's my mentor with breathwork, and started learning about that and doing some breathwork myself and realizing for myself how powerful that was.
and
Um,
can you tell the story? Because I love the story about how she came across breath work.
Yeah, so she had come across breathwork because she had an eating disorder for many years and had um, gone on her own, self healing journey to discover how to heal herself from her eating disorder. And she had tried lots of different modalities, but when she came across breathwork on a trip to Bali, one time, she was just blown away and knew that this was something that needed to be in her life.
Yeah,
And
and wasn't it because she was going to take another class and that class wasn't available, or some yoga
yeah,
class, and she ended
yeah,
up, what's
right.
that?
I think she was going to take a meditation or a yoga class or something, and it wasn't available at the time. And they said, "Well, we have a breathwork class," and she's like, "What is this all about?" Like
The
I
universe intervened.
just
And yeah,
three.
you said that she like left that session, like
Yeah,
changed.
yeah, totally changed. Knowing that, this was something that she needed to bring to the world. And so she created Pause Breath Work. And I'm so grateful for that because it certainly touched my life. It certainly touched many people's lives. And that's what I hope to bring as a piece of that as a facilitator, is to be able to touch other people's lives with the power of breath work.
Yeah. And so it's been an incredible like certification process. It's like a lot of hours where you have to.
Yeah. It is a 7-month program. So I had started it this past summer because she had offered a 6 week, not a 6 week, like a 6 hour breath fest. She did an all day thing. And I had some time off and I was just in a place that I knew I needed to do that. And it was super powerful. And then she offered, said she was opening up for her facilitator training, which is a 7-month, pretty intensive training program to get certified. And there's a lot of parts and pieces to it, but I love it. I love the integrity of it. And I love how much I've gotten out of it. And that's the goal, is not only to become a certified facilitator, but also to help you with your own journey, because we can only help others when we've been helped. Right. So
Mhm.
I think it's important, that we learn how to create our own energetic alignments and our own healthy selves, energetically and emotionally, because we bring that into our sessions. And in order to help others, we need to have that all kind of figured out and clear. So I love all that. So it's really such an amazing program. So I'm in my practicum now and wrapping that up in a few weeks.
Yeah, and I think that you have such a great voice. So if you can just talk about, maybe I should tell my experience, but it is a guided session, which I love, because a lot of times when we're just left to our own devices, especially if we don't really know what we're doing, a lot of people have this trouble with meditation,
Yeah.
and I just like to be guided. But the difference for me with breath work versus meditation is meditation, I feel like my monkey mind
Mhm.
is constantly fighting for time. It's
Mhm.
like constantly like trying to take over. And I feel like with breath work, and I don't know if it's the music that you're using or the fact that your voice is kind of instructive, soft, but continuing to instruct, and it distracts the monkey mind. And I just feel like I get into that zone or that space of feeling like I'm just this floating
Mhm.
soul.
Yeah.
And so for me, that it's brings me to that place that I desire to go in meditation, that is harder for me to go to. So I don't know if you can add any insight into that. I think probably my experience is different. Everybody's unique, right?
Sure, absolutely. Everybody is unique, but I would say that is exactly kind of the goal of pause breath work, where there's many different types of breath work, and some of them are very focused on just having that really fast, deep, kind of hyperventilating breathing, just to go to an altered conscious state. But with
Tony Robbins does that.
right, yeah,
Yes. I don't know, for anybody who's been to his Unleash the Power Within, he does this. I mean, it's like he's pumping up, a tire or something. Yeah.
yes,
And
and
it's like intense. It's
it
like
is. It
a
is very
testosterone version.
totally. It's very intense, and it's sometimes people have tried that type of breath work and been really turned off to breath work, and they're like, I'm not doing that again. That was too much. And that's
That
why
could probably make you faint. I don't
yes,
know.
I mean you can, because you do change your pH in your blood, you're changing, how much oxygen and CO2 you're taking in and letting out. And so people can, faint, they can get dizzy and all those kind of things. So it really, that's why I love pause, because it's more of a gentle, like we say, going on a journey. So it's about, really, the goal is to take people on a guided journey through their breath session. And so using that musicality and using a theme and a mantra, and like going through kind of a journey of where you kind of want to take them, or where they want to go, really working with the client to understand what they're looking for, and taking them through that. And I love that, because it's so much, while we're still changing a lot of that, pH and breathing, you're doing differently, it still is a much more gentle. And that's why I also love, because pause also brings in a piece about trauma informed, because as people breathe, if people have a background of trauma or history of trauma, and trauma really can be anything that's really too fast, too soon, for any kind of system, anyone's nervous system. So it really depends on the person. But a lot of things can come up. And so if you're a facilitator and not really understanding how to do that, and you're doing something like Tony Robbins can do, sometimes you can kind of blow people out, and they, can have, all sorts of emotionality, panic attacks, all those kind of things that can happen potentially. Whereas I love the the pause method, where it's just so much more gentle, and we have our time together to be able to understand if there is anything that comes up, having that sovereignty within, and have teaching your students to have sovereignty on their own bodies, that they can slow down their breath, or let go of their breath, or, get up and move however they want to do it, because our bodies, can, take on so much. And sometimes, it's too much. And so we need to be able to know okay, this is too much for my system and my nervous system is not handling it well, and I need to stop now. And that's all absolutely welcome and wonderful. And then there's other people that, just are good to just like get into that pocket and, like you said, kind of getting that floaty feeling and just allowing their bodies to heal. I mean, it's just allowing that body and letting go of that mind, so
Mhm.
that all that monkey chatter that we often have and so many people have still with meditation, um, it's allowing to just drop into the body and just let the body feel and release whatever it needs to release. And that's
Yeah, yeah. So I want to talk more about your journey. And I know that, so we were in the neuro coaching certification program together, and then COVID hit,
yeah.
and then you kind of like disappeared off the face of the earth and, working, I know, endless hours. And so I just want you to talk a little bit about how you think, because I think what you were doing with the program that you were, I think at the early in the stage, were going through a beta, and
Mhm.
you were, you delivering it, but to a small group of people. Um, but then this all happened, and it made me think that, like, this is such a positive tool for
Mhm.
you to use
Mhm.
in that particular area.
Yeah.
And it just made me, because I always think about how the universe intervenes, and how that this was, even though we don't necessarily see it at the time,
Mhm.
and it just, to me, led you here, that's ultimately going to help you help the people that you want to help in such a deeper, more profound way. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, when COVID hit, I was working an endless amount of hours, and trying to, even meditate for 5 minutes a day, was really all I had. And trying to find some sort of, level playing field for myself and my own emotionality, because I could feel the stress, I could feel the strain and all of that was going on at the time. And so
And you said you're an empath. So,
yeah,
and so here's COVID, and you're
taking
seeing,
yeah, an entire hospital system full of fear, worry, all of that going on. And so, yeah, my system was really like, I feel back now, I look back now and, just, oh, it was just like almost like post-traumatic stress a little bit, because it was so intense, that feeling and just,
and early on, we didn't even really know what we were dealing with, and didn't
right.
have the
And that was
proper, yeah.
That was the thing that was even harder. We had a lot of unknowns, and so things were changing literally by the hour. And so having to put something out, change, policy, doing whatever, in on a turn of a dime as things changed, it was stressful because, then I was in charge, as a leader in our facility, to make a lot of decisions about what we're going to do and how we're going to keep people safe and all of that. And so it was, several couple months in, 3 months in or so, early summer, when I finally took a break and said I need a few days off, and um, knew that I was really teetering on my own burnout, my own stress levels, and really just dove into a lot of self care and did meditation, massage. And that's when I was like, I need to pick up breath work again. And I started doing that. And that's when, I started releasing a lot and just feeling a little less stress, a little, less, of that emotionality and that heaviness. And then, doing her breath fest and going into the facilitator training was just even more, knowing that I needed to step into that. If nothing else, it helped myself, right? So that it was helping myself get clear about where I needed to be. And then, just allowing, myself to also be able to have that knowledge and that tool so that I could help others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we are back. And for those of you who are just listeners and can't see this, we had on my end, an internet fail. So it's rare that it happens. I feel sorry for those people that are in the remote areas, but I am so sorry that Kelly had to deal with that. But fortunately, I know her and she forgave me. So, but what we want to do, to get back into this, is part two of the segment is to talk more about what breath work does and the power of breath work. I mean, I touched a little bit about how I felt different with it doing, if I'm comparing it to meditation. So I'd say it's just this kind of a meditation. I don't know. What would you, I mean, you're the expert now. How do you describe
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I love to describe it like it's meditation on steroids.
Ooh.
So I think because, it is, similar to meditation, but it just gets you there so much faster. And sometimes so much easier because you really, like we were talking about before, it just lets go of that monkey mind, kind of that mind chatter that's always going on. And sometimes when we are sitting in meditation and silence, all of that starts coming up in our brains. But when you start breathing and focusing on the breath, but also like changing again, that pH of your blood and bringing in so much more oxygen, you sort of like the mind after a few minutes sort of just kind of unhooks, and you just drop into your body and allow yourself to just kind of just be, and allow your body to really do the work. And that's the
Yeah,
whole
it's like almost a distraction, right?
yeah, exactly.
A mental distraction because you're so focused on your breathing
Hmm.
that you're not focused, or your mind doesn't tend to wander.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why it's so beautiful. And what Pause always talks about is how the body is the healer. And that's one of the things that with breath work and doing it in this way, we allow our bodies to just be our healers. We allow our bodies to tell us what they need and to show us that emotionality. For some people, they have come into breath work for the first time, and have not felt a whole lot in their bodies for a long period of time, whether they've been, in the midst of an addiction or an eating disorder or anything. A lot of times we can get so disconnected from our bodies, we don't really feel a whole lot. And so breath work can bring that in and allow our bodies to start noticing and experiencing that emotionality again, and allowing ourselves to release that emotionality, things that are, you know, um, just stuck in there, a lot of that energy, and allowing us to just heal. And so that's one of the beautiful things about breath work that I love. A lot of people get stuck with anxiety, or panic attacks and those kind of things. And so many times we identify with that, like I'm an anxious person or I'm a depressed person or those kind of things. But in reality, understanding that we are just human beings having an emotional experience. And so it's, I am somebody who's experiencing anxiety. I am somebody who's experiencing depression, those sorts of things. Not that I am anxiety or I am depression. And so that's why I also love and feel like breathwork has such benefit, that it allows us to heal from those things through our emotions, and being able to let us let go of the anxiety that we're feeling, maybe the depression, the overwhelm, all those kind of things. Or even if those are not part of our lives, just in general, stress levels that many people feel on many different levels. So I
Yeah,
love it.
it's funny you should bring that up because, and I don't talk about this a lot. I'm open when it comes up, but I have had panic attacks,
Hmm.
and I had them when I was a vice president at AOL.
Hmm.
And there's a couple things I attribute it to, but it's so funny because panic attacks are stopping breathing. That's what I learned.
Hmm.
And so breath work to help that, I think, would be a great solution. I didn't really put that together, but I just remember, and they didn't control me, which was great. But the problem is I never knew when I was going to have one,
Yeah,
and it would come out of nowhere.
absolutely.
And I would go months without having one. And
Hmm.
then I would be in a situation, and a couple of times, one time I was in a conference room with people, and I was speaking to them, and
Hmm.
I had to run out of the room.
Yeah.
And another time, I 2 times it happened during interviews. One time I was interviewing somebody for a position, and I had
Mm,
to run out of the room. Another time I was on an interview. I was
yeah.
interviewing, and so, but, it's just like you kinda make up this excuse. "I'm so sorry, I had something in my throat," or, "I'm so sorry." I remember when I was interviewing for a job, the person was so nice, and she said, "Oh, you might be sugar depleted or something." She gave me a piece of candy.
Yeah.
But it was so frustrating, and I feel like I was really misaligned in life.
Mhm.
I was in a job that I'd been promoted into because of my performance,
Mhm.
but nobody ever came to me each time I got promoted. Nobody ever came to me and said, "Would you like to have this job?" They were just like, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Here's a promotion." And
Yeah.
so I got more unhappy and more
Mhm.
disconnected. And at the
Mhm.
same time, my oldest daughter also had a pulmonary embolism. She actually had two. She almost died,
Wow.
and it was a really kind of a life changing experience. That you almost lose your daughter, and it was like the night before her 21st birthday, and I read because I was so frustrated after experiencing this.
Mhm.
I got a book about it, and part of one of the things behind anxiety is that you are faced with a situation that you don't have any control over it, and a lot of times it's some kind of life threatening, or something that disconnected with
Mhm.
how you're living your life would be something that you don't have a control over, probably. So
Absolutely.
I find that so fascinating. I haven't had one for years, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I was just so determined to conquer it, because you just can't. It feels like you feel helpless. And so that made me think, do you get people? Is this something that can really help people who have anxiety attacks?
Absolutely. I think that, it's certainly you can't say you do one breath session and you're healed, right? It's just like anything. When we go to the gym, it takes some time, to get where you want to do. So same thing with a practice of breath work. It's learning the practice and really doing it on a regular basis to, get heal that emotionality so that you can heal whatever is behind those panic attacks. And that's what, again, we talked about a little bit before about pause, and this breathwork program being trauma informed, and what I love so much about it, because like we talked about, a lot of anxiety or those kind of situations like you described with your daughter, trauma can come in so many different forms. We don't always think about, people think about trauma as like sexual abuse or those sorts of things, but in reality, it's anything that's too fast, too soon, too much, and where you don't have choice. And so when you're, just put into a position and you don't really have choice, or, you have something that, is life threatening for your child, there's not a lot of choice, and it's too much, too fast, too soon. So all of those things are emotions and energy that's brought into our bodies. And sometimes we can clear them, and sometimes it's just energy trapped in our bodies. And so
Yeah,
really,
and I think too, a lot of people who and you say, like, these severe trauma experiences versus these things that you think, oh,
yeah,
that's fine. She survived. She was in
right,
the hospital for a week, but she's fine. And
yeah,
you don't sometimes connect the dots, because it didn't start happening like a month or two later.
yeah,
So I never related it to that until like a year later, when I was trying to get to the bottom of it. And I think I also created the problem worse, because I kept reliving it.
yeah,
Like, what
absolutely,
if I hadn't picked up the phone when I did? What if, so, all these circumstances
for
were
sure.
there, so she did survive. But anyways, I think that this episode could be helpful for those
Mhm.
people who are having those and have no idea where it came from, because it's some connection in
Right.
something like that might seem simple to you.
Totally. And that's the um, wonderful thing that I love about that. It's, people think about therapy, and I just feel like this is such a great conversation, right? Because we don't have enough talk discussion in this world about mental health and people's mental health. Like you said, like anxiety, it comes out of nowhere, but people think you're fine. They see you on the outside, everything's all fine and dandy, and they don't understand that, why, if you're having anxiety, why is it not an everyday thing and you're debilitated? Well, that's not how anxiety works, right? And so
And
it's just
it's such a weird feeling too, because it's like your heart races, you
mhm,
get sweaty palms, and you like can't speak.
yeah,
It's like you freeze.
yep,
And I don't know. I mean, I've read and I felt it myself, and I know there's cases of it being probably worse than I experienced, but it's so true that it's just
yeah,
like I either run,
yeah,
or I die. I mean,
yeah,
it's like, and that's what I did in my situations. I would just like leave the room, and then
right.
like, catch it. But I think once I realized what was happening is that I was holding my breath and I
Mm,
wasn't like just breathing and just,
yeah.
it was just this like overcoming. It was just this, I was overcome with
Mhm.
this sense of, I have to escape. I have to
Yeah,
escape. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I mean, every emotion, there's a corresponding breath pattern is what, I know now. And that, it makes a lot of sense because when you think about it, like when you're anxious, how do you breathe? You're almost like, you don't have a whole lot of nice deep breaths or exhales. You're basically like these short, breaths. Same thing when we're angry or when we're happy, we're breathing in different ways. And so our emotions guide a lot of that, but we don't always think about how it is affecting us. And so, during a breathwork session and learning how to breathe in so much deeper than many of us ever do,
Mhm.
is just helping to tap into those part of our brain and the autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system, which allows us to calm and rest and digest, they always say. So it's just tapping into that part of our brain versus that fight or flight side of our brain, right, which is like run, 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 fight, 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 which a lot of times you experience like anxiety. I've also had that experience as well. And for me, a lot of times it's been also like I get this tunnel vision, almost like I'm blacking out, like everything around me is like turning black and I'm like ready to pass out along with the, heart racing and stuff. So it's very unique and
So
everybody.
you've experienced them too then. Uh,
Absolutely.
oh, that's so helpful for for the people that you're working with, I think.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
know
And
that.
right. And seeing how, much it's helped me when I am embodying that and really being in that practice on a regular basis. And I can tell now if I've gone a few weeks without breathing in that way, and I start to feel like all of the stuff coming up again, I'm like, I need to have a breath session myself, and so it's always that ebb and flow. We always are, it's not like you get to one place and you're like, oh, same thing with health, you just get to your ideal weight and you just can't like throw everything to the wind. It's like just constantly, thinking and taking care of yourself. It's the same thing with mental health and our self-care, and whether you're doing meditation or breath work, it's a practice.
Yeah, and it's funny what came up for me because we were talking earlier about we both got kind of started a little side hustle with Beachbody, which is funny because there's a lot of successful business people who started out in
Yeah.
that manner. And I think with women, we tend to always want to work on our self, like, oh, I need to get in shape or I need to lose that weight. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes we take action
Mhm.
because we want to lose weight when we don't realize like what the magic that can happen mentally for us. And so I would like maybe you to talk a little bit about that. But one thing that came up is I remember, did you ever read the book by Darren Olean? He's the creator of
Oh,
Shakeology.
superfoods. Yeah,
Yeah,
I had never read it. Yeah.
Super
Oh,
life.
Super Life. Yeah. I
Super
never.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he talks about the 5, it was a very interesting, education for me
Mhm.
because he talks about the 5 things that you would not believe what they are because, and his whole thing is he created Shakeology, which has all these super food ingredients in it, but one of the 5 things is oxygen.
Mhm.
And he talks about he does breath work, and he
Mhm.
talks about how important deep breathing is.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And it's something we take for granted.
Mhm.
Water is another one. So those are 2 of the 5.
Mhm.
And what water can do to the body if you don't have enough of it,
Oh yeah.
it when he describes it, it's horrible. After reading that chapter, I would never not, like I drink so much water now because of that. But and then the way he does his water, he doesn't even like tap water. No, no, no. He collects water from the rain and
Gosh.
yeah. But
Wow.
it was so interesting about oxygen because of how he talked. And that's one of the things he said about smokers, that
Mm.
smokers they're deep breathers.
Mhm.
And it's a form of that breath work.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
thought about that. That's
Yeah, and they're so attached to that. It's hard for them to break that habit because they, that's what they probably do is get into breath work. But yeah, and so it was really interesting to me because oxygen is one of those things that's readily available to us and we
yep,
don't even think about it.
right.
But if we didn't have it,
Right. And
yeah.
that's the thing that's amazing. Like it's so when I first got into this, and even when like my mentor Samantha got into it as well, it's kind of like you think, oh well, it's just breathing, right? And you don't realize you have this endless supply, in front of you all day long, that you have that you can tap into and just take in that oxygen, and it's
Yeah, but
just
that
take
oxi it's more. It's like there's
it
something.
in.
I mean, it's a lot more scientific in what it does to your body, like that deep inhale of oxygen.
Mhm.
Like, and some people do even oxygen chambers. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
so it's really
Yeah,
really interesting.
it's
So
yeah.
talk a little bit about how, because I kind of veered off with that book, but like, because I think you and I both had the same experience of transformation that started from the outside, but went
Mhm.
inward, and
Yeah,
inward part of it has been so much more powerful for
yeah.
us.
And I will say, it's an ongoing journey that I still say that I'm always on is, in my mid 40s, I, had seen like an infomercial or something. I was just at, my one of my highest weights, and I was like just feeling like I got to make some change, and saw something about, I don't know, a fitness expert. And then I had heard a friend of mine had actually posted on Facebook about Beachbody. And so chatted with her. I ended up doing a lot of that, got into all of that because it was so transformational for me because I ended up losing 45, nearly 50 pounds.
Wow.
I,
What was your
you know,
program? What was your first one?
my first one was Turbo Fire.
Oh, Shalene.
I
Yeah.
love her. She was like the greatest.
Mine
Um,
was T25.
oh, awesome.
John
Okay.
T. Yeah.
I've done all, almost, I feel like almost all of
We
them.
always remember it's like our first boyfriend, our
Yeah,
first
right.
Beachbody workout on the
Yeah,
DVDs.
yeah, it's still my go-to. I know on the DVD, totally. Um, so I ended up doing that, but the thing that even was more powerful than losing all that weight was, like you said, that mental shift. Like I felt like a whole new person, and the energy that I was putting out was attracting people that would just comment and say, what did you do? You're so positive, I need to do that. And that's where I started like, oh, I love being able to share and help others make their transformation, and realizing how much that filled me up. And I did that for, 4 years or so, and, felt amazing. And then hit kind of like a wall in my life when a good friend of ours, son got leukemia, and started going down that route and realizing and knowing my back history, I am an emotional eater. So a lot of that old history started coming up, and I lost track of a lot of self-care. So even though I was still, working on building my business and doing a lot of that stuff, it took its toll. And so, I find myself sometimes back in that same place again, starting all over, but knowing that I will be okay, and that I have the tools, available to me. And I still, have more tools. Breathwork's one of them, to realize that I can let go of a lot of that emotional, stuck energy, and beating myself up, thinking that, oh, here I am again. And I'm a failure, quote unquote, but it's really just, the ebb and flow of life. Things happen, and it's just a lesson learned for me again, knowing that I can choose again, right? That it's not something that has to define me and say that I was any kind of failure or that it didn't work, because I know it worked in the past. I know it, has happened. And just it's also about coming to that realization of what we're experiencing in life and how we experience life. I realize how I show up when I'm stressed out, and how much I need to take care of my mental health. I've always kind of known that, but I think over the last couple of years, it's actually been super transparent in this transition in my life. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like you talk about failures and maybe having gained some of that weight back
mhm,
can be viewed as a failure because to ourselves,
yeah,
but yet it led you to the
Mhm.
next thing that is an additional tool for you to not only help yourself, but help somebody else. Because if you hadn't had that dip or that ebb,
Mhm.
then you wouldn't have learned this. You wouldn't have
Totally.
helped me today.
Yeah, totally. I so see that because yeah, it's just realizing that I'm on this path. We all are on a path, and we don't always understand that path, right? And
Yep.
sometimes we get frustrated because of the path that we're on. And so it's like just opening up and realizing, and like you said, for me, it's just like, you know what? I just was needed to go through this again to have more clarity, to have some more awakening of what really is, kind of goes on with me so that I can find new tools, find ways to help myself again, and be able to bring yet another tool into that kind of
Yeah,
repertoire.
and yeah, I also think that the other thing is as we build our own businesses, we are, even though we feel that we have the experience with a skill set to help people,
Mhm.
sometimes that confidence isn't there initially. And
Yeah.
I feel like both with the neuro coaching that we experienced and then with this breath work, I mean, you come across to me as so like knowledgeable, so comfortable, so confident. And
Mm,
so I feel like sometimes that, that's what we needed.
yeah.
And that's what we needed. And you got that. And now it's just going to be so much more helpful to
Yeah.
those people that
Yeah. And
that
that's
come
my
into your
hope.
life. Yeah.
That's my hope to help my clients and those that I work with and future clients, like just to be able to share with them, because I think in so many ways we all relate. And I've talked to several clients I've been doing sessions with, and the one thing that is so beautiful is that we say, we don't do this enough. When you're in a session and you just feel so held and so in a safe space that you can feel whatever your body needs to feel at that moment, and you're not going to be judged and you're not going to be, whatever. We just don't have enough of that sometimes in our life. And so
Mhm.
in our world and those people around us. So I just love that, that I have the ability now to, bring that to others.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for, coming on today and sharing your latest journey. So I know what you're doing is amazing because I've been the beneficiary of it and I can't wait to see what 2021 unfolds for you. Definitely will be better than last year.
Yeah. I'm
So,
hoping.
as we close, I'd love for you to share like what if somebody is in a place where they are feeling like they're failing at something,
Mhm,
uh, and, it's a new year, fresh
mhm,
start, fresh look. What
mhm,
would be something that you would suggest? Like, just and I try to tell people like that
mhm,
I help and my clients
mhm.
is, and there was a great quote the other day that I shared on social media. It says, "Don't look at the whole staircase; just look at the first step."
Absolutely. I love that quote.
So yeah, and so it's so true, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what's your piece of advice because you did make that shift this year?
Yeah. I am a big journaler. And so, part of, like when we've gone through the neuro coaching, we have so many, it all starts with a lot of times those thoughts that ruminate in our heads and our monkey minds and all that chatter. And so for me, it's always been so powerful in working with clients is also like, those thoughts can go round and round and round in our head and never end. And we wonder why, or what can we do, or I don't know how to get past this, or what's the next step. But then writing it all down and just kind of like, on the paper, getting it out of our heads is that start. And then I think finding those different tools and making the choice to try a new tool and being open to something new, because I think we don't, even when I first tried yoga, or when I first tried breath work, or when you try a new workout, it may seem uncomfortable, or I'm not quite sure about all this. But what I have found, I think that has helped me even over the last, 6, 7, 8 years, is really just saying, what is it going to hurt if I'm just open to trying something new? if I'm just going to remain open to hearing a new perspective, to trying something new. And so if breath work is really new for, somebody that wants to, but if they're interested in trying it, I just encourage them to give it a try, and to see how it can maybe help them. So,
Yeah, I definitely, as we've said, I want to learn more about it this year. I think
yeah,
it's just amazing. And I picked a word for the year. I told Kelly before our session, and we used it in my session today,
yeah,
and it's silence. And so
mhm,
breath work kind of and that go together. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
silence.
Word for the year is renew, and I think it also is fitting for breath work, that
Yes.
trying
Yeah.
to renew ourselves, and renew everything that we've maybe wanted to do in the
Mhm.
past and haven't let ourselves do. It's time
Yes.
to renew and start again. So
Yes. So suggestion for any listeners, pick a word for the year.
yeah,
Pick something that resonates. Yeah, I've done that. This is my 3rd year in a row doing that.
yeah,
So
me
it's really,
too.
yeah, yeah. It's up on my desk right in front of me right now. So thanks so much. And I
Oh,
know we'll be seeing each other
yeah,
in the online space, but I will hopefully have you back in a few months for another update.
thank you. Thank you so much
Yes.
for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And thanks for bearing with me with the internet stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And where can they find you online?
So I have a couple places, on Instagram. I'm Kelly West Online. Same thing on Facebook. I'm Kelly West Online. I'm going through a transition on my website, so it is not up and running at the moment. But yeah, those are the best places. If you have any questions about breath work, they feel free to reach out.
Yes, easy name. Plus it's with a Y,
Yeah.
Kelly West
Yep.
online. All right. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.